Good afternoon. It's great to see so many of you here for our session today on how AWS Marketplace helps government agencies to meet accessibility mandates. My name is Brianna Tucci, and I am the ICMP Program Lead and National Security Customer Advisor at AWS. ICMP, of course, is our AWS Marketplace for the US intelligence community, and I'll be talking more about that later on in this session. All right, before we get started, let's all get up on our feet. Will you join me? It's been a long week. We're halfway through here at reInvent. You've been sitting down through all these sessions. We're going to play a little game together. Are you ready for this? Level 1 goes like this. Stay standing if you're already familiar with AWS Marketplace. I don't think anybody sat down. Look at that. This is fantastic. Okay, are you ready for level 2? This level's a bit harder. Stay standing if you've ever used AWS Marketplace to buy or sell software or services. Fantastic. We still have a lot of people standing in the room. That's great to see so many of you are already using AWS Marketplace. Go ahead and take your seats. Thanks for playing along. Matt's going to be playing another game with you later on, so you have that to look forward to. His version of the game is a little bit different from mine. The topic of accessibility that we'll be covering today is a passion to Lorianne, Matt, and myself. And we'll be sharing with each of you why we're so inspired to help enhance digital accessibility worldwide. I'm going to start off our discussion by laying the groundwork, setting the strategic context, not only about why digital accessibility is important, but also about why it's so relevant to organizations like yours. Then I'm going to pass the baton to Lorianne, and she's going to share with you how she views enhancing digital accessibility from a government customer lens. Then Matt's going to take the stage, and he's going to share with you his customer-centric approach to assessing, analyzing, and enhancing software to make it more digitally accessible. And finally, I'll bring it all together by explaining the role of AWS Marketplace and how we can use AWS Marketplace to help organizations like yours access the software that you need and ensure that your software is digitally accessible. At the end, we will save time for questions. So we'll have somebody with a mic runner. Feel free to raise your hands. We'd love to hear from you and answer your questions at the end. Today, governments must evolve faster than ever in order to meet the needs of the citizenry. And at AWS, we believe that innovation is key to this rapid evolution. Whether it's digitizing records or modernizing applications, at AWS, we always start with the end customer and determine what it is that they're trying to solve so that we can approach that with fresh ideas and new tools. And these new tools, we believe, must enable organizations to meet all of their requirements, including their digital accessibility requirements. Now today, the end customer that we're focused on are organizations like yours across all verticals, from nonprofits and healthcare to the financial sector and the intelligence community. Any organization that wants to enhance its software and its digital content to make it more accessible to its workforce and to its customers. In recent years, executive focus has accelerated accessibility. This past September, the White House made two major announcements related to this. First, the president reaffirmed his commitment to transforming the way that the government communicates digitally with the American people in order to ensure that information is easy to use, trustworthy, and accessible. That same month, as part of the White House's National Cyber Workforce Education Program, it launched a new initiative to help ensure that people with disabilities are able to access information communication technology in order to use it for applying for jobs, training on the job, and in general, accessing information and services. The government mandates that federal agencies recruit, hire, develop, promote, and retain our nation's top talent. And in order to do so, these federal agencies must provide reasonable accommodations and ensure that its digital content and software is accessible so that people with disabilities can be assessed based on their merits and their merits alone. This will ensure that individuals across the government who are both applying to work and employees are able to meet all of the roles and responsibilities in their particular jobs. Have you heard of 508 compliance? Section 508 mandates that federal agencies that procure software ensure that it is digitally accessible. So what does software accessibility really mean? Well, according to the White House, in this context, software accessibility refers to the design and development of information communication technology so that all people, including those with disabilities, can access it. Now, you may be wondering who this topic impacts and why it is such an integral component of our nation's digital, diversity, and cyber missions. 1 billion people in the world have a visual, auditory, physical, or cognitive disability that requires digital content be accessible. That's nearly 1 in 6 people. Nearly everyone in this room has a friend, family member, or someone in your network that this issue impacts. And earlier, I mentioned that Lorianne, Matt, and myself are each inspired to enhance digital accessibility for different reasons. So let me tell you a little bit about what brought me here. 7 years ago, I was a counter-narcotics officer at the US Embassy in Bogota, where I joined local troops in the heart of Colombia's jungles eradicating illicit crops. I worked side by side victims of landmines who lost their sight and their limbs in the pursuit of global security. So for them, and for all those who have disabilities, helping organizations to ensure that their digital content is accessible for their workforce and for their customers is the right thing to do. And that's why I'm so excited to work side by side customers and partners like Lorianne and Matt, who share with me in this inspiration and this desire to enhance digital accessibility worldwide. So with that, let me introduce you to Lorianne Duval-Jones. Lorianne is the Accessibility Futures Referent at the Central Intelligence Agency, and she's going to be sharing with you how she views overcoming the challenges of digital accessibility from a government customer lens.
Are you going to do it for Matt?
I'm going to do it for him.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's kind of funny. I bet you didn't come here and expect to see CIA on this slide, but here we are. All right. So Accessibility Futures Referent, that's kind of a funny name, and it's not one you hear out in industry at all. It was a unique position that we put together to really focus on making the environment more accessible. We have reasonable accommodation. That's a great tool in the toolbox. It's very unique to a person and a person with a diagnosis. But it isn't scalable. And as more and more people come into our workforce who need accommodations, we had to kind of come up with something else. So this position was put together to look at the whole environment and make recommendations for how to make the whole environment more accessible. And while that also included facilities and different cultural type activities, what I'm going to talk about today is really our digital environment. So as the Accessibility Futures referent, my vision was to really just go beyond reasonable accommodation and really go deep. I felt like all of the changes that we could make to make our environment more accessible would not only help people with disabilities, but also people who are neurodiverse and the general population, because we were going to put more tools in there that could help anybody be more productive. So that's my passion. And why is it my passion? I'm not sure if you know, and I'm trying to look through the lights don't help, but I'm trying to look at the audience, but I'm a bit older than most of you. I was born in the early 60s, and I am in my early 60s. And when I was coming up through public education, college, and starting my professional career, there was no diagnosis for someone like me. My family and my teachers were baffled by me. I didn't think like the other kids. I didn't behave like the other kids. And these grown-ups' response to that was to discipline me into conformity, put me in a box. Now, I'm sure some of you might know what this is like. You were probably told, you probably had a ruler hit over your knuckles. You probably were told you had to sit in a chair until you could learn to sit still or stop talking. And you probably were, told you had to color within the lines. And trees didn't have that color, and you couldn't be creative. You had to be like everyone else. I grew up in a very rural part, and so it was very parochial for what had to happen, and there was just no flexibility for somebody who kind of lived outside the norm. And so, by all standards, I've had a great career, very successful one. I'm at the top of my career service here in the agency. I've had lots of really awesome jobs. And those grown-ups would then say, "Our disciplining you this way helped make you successful." And I would say, my self-defiance, my strong will, is what made me successful in spite of it. But why did we have to work so hard? Why can't we build an environment where we take people from surviving, that struggle to survive, and make them thrive? And tap into that creative network that's out there for people being different. And that was why this is my passion, and this is why I jumped at the chance for making a difference in the environment. Sorry, I got a cold this week and all that walking outside, and it's killing me. So I kind of talked a little bit about, we noticed that the workforce was becoming more diverse, and we really just couldn't use reasonable accommodation to accommodate everybody. It's just too expensive, and it's just not scalable. And so what we did is we met with each segment of the workforce and asked, what do you need in order to thrive? What do you use at home? What could make your daily life better? For things like for people who are blind, low vision, there's interacting with the system in an audible way. But we kind of noticed that was still only surviving. We really needed to think about usability as well. We really conformed to the Section 508 compliance standards, and we kind of look at that as the entry level for an application or a website, but it's not everything. How you navigate through the application is important too. So it wasn't just the standards that come with Section 508, it's all the other standards that we want to put in for our usability, for our user experience. So how do we navigate? Do we just, does a person who is blind or low vision have to go through the whole document to get to where they want to go every time they get to that document, or can you jump around? Is it logical? Is it broken up? What's the usability? For deaf and hard of hearing, using speech to text and text to speech to allow access to meetings when we didn't have sign language interpreters dedicated to somebody, we did not want them to miss content that they needed to do their job. And folks with physical impairments. You know, if you have somebody who doesn't have full control of a hand and can't use a keyboard, can't use a mouse, how can we have an alternate way for them to interact with the system? A stylus maybe eye gaze to navigate the system, maybe using, I don't know if you guys see this or have heard of this, but sip and puff, where they can use their breath in a tube to navigate the system. How can we make them more productive? But there are other disabilities. There are hidden disabilities. There's some that are visible and medical: cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, Parkinson's disease. How do we help them? Another interaction with the system, with a mouse on that little arrow, trying to navigate that to click on a little radio button, that's hell on earth for them. How do we make that easier for them? Having a different way to get around the system. And then, we were talking to people who have immunocompromised systems, long COVID, cancer. What do they need? And then people like me, neurodiverse. We didn't really have a lot of tools in the ecosystem. We really kind of focused in on what we could do to assist people who are neurodiverse. Dark mode for people who have autism or with light sensitivities, having an alternative way to look at a website or an application without animations for somebody who has seizure disorders, focus applications for ADHD, grammar assist for dyslexia. But what did we need to do for the other? Dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia. And then we also had to think about color blindness. So here's my game for you. How many different types of color blindness do you think there are? So raise your hands. How many think there are 3? Good. How many think there are 4? Okay. How many think there are 5? And how many think there are 6? There are 6. So, it's funny. I do have it's not a funny story. It was a scary story at the time, but my husband and I kind of laugh about it now. So if you have Deuter Anomaly, that is where it's a red-green deficiency where certain shades of green look more like red. Protoanomaly, and I'm reading this because this is hard for me to say these, protoanomaly is where certain shades of red look more green. Protanopia and deuteranopia is where somebody is unable to tell the difference between red and green. So let's think about driving a car and getting to a stoplight for somebody who's got that. Now, my husband has that, and he knows that a light is on and the location of the light is red, yellow, green. But we were on a drive and we came into a city and the stoplights were not vertical, they were horizontal. And he was panicked. What light is on right now? I said, what are you talking about? He goes, what light is on? Is it red or green? And I said, it's red. And he goes, oh my God, I couldn't tell. He didn't know the position. So even in how we set up our everyday environment makes a difference as well. All right, so trigonometry. It's hard to tell the difference between blue and green and between yellow and red. Tritanopia, someone who cannot tell between blue and green, purple and red, yellow and pink. And then if you cannot see any color at all. That is monochromacy. Now, as you build your websites, as you build your applications, you need to maybe think about color. And if you're a PM, I don't know how many PMs we have in here, but if you do stoplight charts to show your status, I did have somebody who was colorblind tell me that was hell on earth as well, because they did not know what to do with that. All right, so the digital environment is just changing at such a rapid pace. And as we were looking across our ecosystem at all the applications and all the websites and all the content that needed to happen, and when you think about in your organization the amount of work that needs to be done to make things accessible, it's not just applications and websites, it's all the content, all the training materials. And that's a huge job. And we first used traditional methods. We used humans. We had testers to kind of look at it and go against the Section 508. That was not sustainable. We just could not keep up. We were getting complaints that things were scored very high and still not usable. And the applications were changing all the time. And we just could not keep up with it. So we really had to think about technology as a way to get over the hump. We also tried to deputize people, different application developers and that, but we found that humans would be very objective about how they scored things, and they would, no surprise, round up or score very high when something didn't apply. And so we had to take the subjectivity out of it. So we really had to, we just needed a new approach. And what we started to do is look to our vendors. And because of who we are and our environment, we needed to have a vendor that really understood our ecosystem and have personnel that was vetted appropriately in order to help us bring this in, configure it, and actually apply it to our environment. We also had an education problem, because as we were trying to deputize those application developers, we found out that they really didn't know how to code to the standards. And so we needed resources to help our development cadre to do that, build those applications in an accessible way. So we looked to our vendors, and Amazon is one of our vendors, and TPGI has an automated testing tool that is available to us on the Amazon Marketplace. And we are currently configuring it and deploying it in our ecosystem. And we can configure that tool to the Section 508 standards, but we can also add those additional standards for the usability work that we want to do. And they also had a knowledge base and a tutorial to be that support for our application developers so that we could train them appropriately to build those applications in an accessible way. These tools will really help us get over the backlog because in some cases a human does not need to be involved. It has a way to sense when an application or a website has changed, and it will automatically do a test to see if the changes are accessible. So we really feel like this will help us manage and make our environment more accessible. So now what I'm going to do is invite Matt up, and he is going to talk to us about the tool and himself and why it's a passion for him.
Excellent, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So as both Lorianne and Brianna had mentioned, my name is Matt Ader. I'm the Vice President at TPGI of a Sparrow company. One thing you'll notice is I'm blind. Shocker, I'm carrying a cane, just to make sure I don't fall off the stage, just kidding. I won't do that to you. So obviously, this is important to me, not just for personal reasons, but also for business reasons, because there's an opportunity for organizations to be able to support people with disabilities in the workplace and their customers. So it's obviously very key to me to be able to work and live my life. And every day I deal with something that may not be accessible. So Brianna had done a game with you. Now mine's going to be a little different because besides the lights hitting me in the eyes, I can't see you if you stood up. So we're going to use noise instead. That means you're going to have to clap for me. It's my other way of trying to make sure I get claps in the stage, right? So it's one way to cheat that. So first, I'd like everybody in the room to clap so I can get a number. How many people? All right, good. And next time we'll just do one clap on this. So can everybody who's heard about accessibility before today clap once? Good. Love that. Now, do you know somebody who's disabled? Clap once. So you won't notice right now, but yesterday I left my house at 5 in the morning from Virginia, and rolling my suitcase down the 2 front steps, I twisted my ankle going off the first 2 steps. This created a temporary disability. Let's hope it's temporary. And got to Dulles Airport and actually had to use a wheelchair for the first time, which as a blind person, I refuse to use a wheelchair because they always want to put me in one. So this was a temporary disability, and even when I got to Las Vegas, I still had to use the wheelchair, and then I found bags of ice at the hotel and was able to ice down, and I'm fine now. But that temporary disability changed the way I looked at the way I had to deal with things. And obviously it wasn't around blindness, it was something else that impacted me. And if you could clap once if you've ever had a temporary disability. Yeah, everybody's faced this at one point in their life, right? So I want to talk about some of the things that TPGI, our company, has looked at as drivers for accessibility. And that kind of gets us started in why we do what we do. So first is litigation. We all hate this, but it's a fact that there are lawsuits out there, and some legitimate lawsuits. Let's hope that more legitimate than not legitimate, but it's not necessarily the case. But these lawsuits are impacting companies and impacting people with disabilities to be able to consume goods. And in 2022 alone, 3,200 lawsuits. So I don't want people to do it because of that. We actually want you to do it because it's the right thing to do. But lawsuits do exist, and we need to be prepared for that. That's 12% increase over 2021. So lawsuits aren't going down around this topic. The next is the European Accessibility Act. How many people, if you can clap once, do work around the world outside of the United States? We got a few, good. So, European Accessibility Act takes effect by June of 2025. This is going to impact e-commerce, banking, media services, telecommunications, and travel plus hospitality. All of those industries are going to be impacted by this. This is going to impact the digital assets such as websites, mobile applications, and self-service devices like kiosks. If these are not accessible by June of 2025, each of the different European countries will have different mandates and penalties applied to the companies who are not doing it. And you're already seeing companies start now because it's not that simple to change all of your digital assets. So think about it, we're 18 months away, right? 19 months away from that? That's really quick from a technology perspective. You ask the people doing the development and all the testing and the back-end systems and things like that. So next is Department of Justice and Section 752. So Department of Justice has been looking at things over the last 6 months, and other federal agencies as well, so not just Department of Justice. You've seen Health and Human Services and some of the other federal agencies. We've heard the transportation, education are all looking at similar rulemakings out there as well. And what they're looking at is strengthening the accessibility rules for digital assets. Now, these will be ones that are funded by federal agencies, meaning that somebody receives federal money to do what they do. So what does that mean? In healthcare, that means if you take money from the federal government for insurance, then that could impact your ability if your stuff is not accessible, if Health and Human Services passes their rules. So understanding all of the impacts of what DOJ, Department of Justice, is doing, and the impacts to both state and local government, because they all receive federal funds, will be flow downs to those organizations. And these are anybody receiving federal dollars, and I think Brianna had mentioned Section 508, and so did Lorianne as well. Think about all the different services we're talking about. It could be applying for permits, checking status of service requests, registering vehicles, and paying taxes and fees. These are just some of those things. But education, look at all the universities who receive federal funds. They're all going to be impacted by these changes. Section 152, basically all federal agencies back in August this year had to report, I think it was like 105 questions they had to complete. At some point, all those federal agencies are going to release, or the government's going to release the information that was gathered. And we're going to figure out how those federal agencies are surviving today when it comes to those questions that they were asked. When that happens, we're going to learn a lot about whether or not the things they're buying and the services they're doing, are they accessible? So if you're a product, you're on site at a federal agency and you're building an application for that federal agency, it has to comply. If you're selling a product to a federal agency, it has to comply. Section 508 goes back as far as 1998. This is a while ago, okay? So the fact that we're just digging in even more, kind of frightening that it's been 25 years and we're still questioning whether or not the federal agencies are surviving on this. So the requirements state that they must be able to create, buy, and use technology effectively for people with disabilities. Now, the next big driver is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Now, most of us understand that most Fortune 1000 companies are looking at DEI programs. Now they've added A for accessibility. And this impacts all facets of accessibility today. Websites, documents, internal applications, onboarding processes, and so on. Disability N, which is one of the largest organizations that kind of looks around accessibility and disabilities inclusion, did a study over the summer. 485 companies participated in their Disability Equality Index program and benchmarked themselves. This is a very important part of an organization, is to actually benchmark where you are today and where you want to go. The customer challenge. Let's talk about the customer challenge. Now, Lorianne mentioned this before. It is all about scalability. Right now, we're dealing with people, tons of people who are testing and validating accessibility. In one federal agency, they have 60 people doing this full time. Okay? But think about it. We don't get software in a box anymore, do we? Does anybody pick up software in a box at a store anymore? Probably not. How is it delivered? It's delivered electronically. It's changing frequently. Your operating systems, your browsers, your productivity tools are all changing regularly. The assistive technology that was mentioned, which is what I'm using here to navigate my slides, that's changing to keep up with all of that technology. And we have to test for accessibility with all of these things in the mix. And so manual testing may still exist tomorrow. It's not going to go away because there's still a usability factor too. But at the same time, can we knock out big chunks of this accessibility by using tools that can do some of this, okay? And so it's really impossible for us to test everything if we don't implement tools to do so. And then finally, we can't train everybody without content. We need training materials, we need knowledge bases, we need data to help people actually do their job. Let's think about it. Most of these developers, they're thinking about accessibility for one small portion of their job, hopefully at the planning portion, so it makes it easier. All right, let's talk about the customer approach and how we did this. And it was a combination of the customer, TPGI, and AWS Marketplace. We have a product called TPGI ARC Accessibility Resource Center. ARC stands for Accessibility Resource Center. And it's a full spectrum platform to be able to provide accessibility services across the agency. And it's there to help organizations be able to support a whole range of services. And today it's available through the AWS Marketplace. And I'll tell you, if we hadn't had this, the time and effort to actually do something else for the agency would have taken a lot longer. It was amazing how easy it was to work with AWS on this program in the IC Marketplace. So here's some of the things that it can do. Monitor your websites and applications. APIs for testing and testing before production. So as you submit code, it will test the code, come back and tell you if it fails. If it fails, you can actually set up where it actually rejects the deployment of the software or that line of code. Training, knowledge base, and then providing solutions for solving problems. These are all the great things that the product can do, but the most important thing is a partnership with AWS that allowed us to do this. I'd like to bring Brianna back up to finish the talk today, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matt. It's always inspiring to hear your story and to learn more about what you're doing to enhance digital accessibility worldwide. All right, like Matt said, now it's my turn to wrap this all up and show the role of AWS Marketplace in all of this. But first, we have to start with the underlying problem, the software supply chain. This is chaotic. There are so many pieces to this puzzle. Contract vehicles, RFPs, security risk assessments, invoice tracking. Look, it's still going. I get overwhelmed looking at this slide, and it's my slide. But that's exactly the point that we're trying to convey here. The software supply chain is overwhelming, but it shouldn't be, and it doesn't have to be. Digital transformation requires software procurement. But currently, digital transformation is being encumbered by the legacy software supply chain, and AWS customers are being saddled by growing O&M costs for legacy applications that are stuck on-prem. So what can we do about this? How do we simplify and modernize the software supply chain? The first part of the answer lies in reducing the time and effort that it takes for search and discovery. So that's testing and evaluating new software products. But of course, speed is only one part of the solution, because organizations still must work within constraints, parameters, and well-intentioned guardrails that are put in place, like the federal acquisition process. So the second half of this solution is making it easier for developers to get permission and approval from contracts, legal, and procurement representatives so that they can efficiently access the software that they need, procure it, and deploy it in their cloud environments. And AWS Marketplace enables exactly that. Based on the trends and challenges that we've seen across every sector and industry, we launched AWS Marketplace to fundamentally transform the software supply chain. And in doing so, we are transforming the way that customers search for, test out, evaluate, subscribe to, procure, deploy, and govern third-party software, data, and services. And while AWS Marketplace offers a broad selection of these third-party resources, like the ones that Lorianne and Matt were talking about to enhance digital accessibility, AWS Marketplace also offers a set of tools and features to help organizations work within those constraints, parameters, and well-intentioned guardrails that I was just mentioning. So let's explore some of these features and tools that AWS Marketplace offers to help organizations like yours enhance your security, control, and governance of your software solutions. First, every product that's listed in AWS Marketplace is first evaluated, and our catalog is continuously scanned for vulnerabilities. Let's take a closer look at Vendor Insights and Private Marketplace. Vendor Insights is a feature that allows customers to streamline their security risk assessments by receiving information about vendors and products related to security compliance. We're all familiar with buyer's remorse, right? Vendor Insights is basically preventing buyer's remorse by making sure that you know upfront what you're getting. So Vendor Insights can be used in the pre-procurement evaluation process, and after you've subscribed to a product in AWS Marketplace, you can sign up for notifications through Vendor Insights so that you are continually monitoring your security compliance. Private Marketplace is a tool for organizations to set up a pre-approved list of vendors and products from within our AWS Marketplace catalog, such that end users can go into that private marketplace and ensure that whatever they're selecting to buy and deploy is already approved. Private Marketplace is built on top of AWS Marketplace, so it still enables for those easy deployments into your cloud environments. And it also ensures that customers are able to work within those constraints, parameters, and well-intentioned guardrails that your organizations have in place. All right, next comes AWS Marketplace for the US intelligence community, ICMP, what a lot of you I know have been waiting for, and frankly, my favorite part. As we see government customers embarking more and more on these massive cloud migrations, we see it happening at higher and higher classification levels. So that means that customers now not only need third-party software in commercial AWS regions, they also need these tools in their Amazon dedicated clouds, or ADCs. An ADC is an air-gapped network that enables a secure, full cloud environment at specific classification levels for certain government customers. All right, let me say that one more time because I'm going to be using the term ADC quite a lot, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. An ADC is an air-gapped network that enables a full, secure cloud experience at certain classification levels for specific government customers. Our customers, and particularly those in the intelligence community, face procurement challenges and provisioning challenges in their ADCs. And for that reason, we launched the ICMP program. ICMP delivers our commercial AWS service to our ADC customers. And when we work with customers and partners like Lorianne and Matt, we are able to innovate and bring new tools into our ADCs that likely were not there before and may not be able to get in there otherwise. I often hear stories from customers about these hard and heavy lifts of bringing software into ADCs or over into the high side. They talk about having to first download the software, then sneakernet it through their agencies, and then push it up over into the high side. And when I hear stories like that, I get excited about what we offer in ICMP, which is the ability to move these products over into the high side, into our ADCs, using AWS Diode. And through AWS Diode, we're able to bring in new technologies, usually for the first time ever, third-party tools related to Gen AI, blockchain, network infrastructure tools, tools that our government customers in these ADCs need access to in order to complete their national security missions. And so through working with customers like Lorianne and partners like Matt, we are able to transform the set of tools that's being used in particular by government agencies that are serving the citizenry and fulfilling national security mandates. Now, all of the vendors that we have in ICMP are programmatically vetted for foreign ownership, control, and influence by the government. And that's just one of the ways that we make sure we are working within the constraints set in place by the governments for security compliance. We've also aligned ICMP with cloud contracts to make the delivery of this third-party technology, this cutting-edge technology, that much faster to our mission partners. And we've learned over time that channel partners are key to driving this adoption. So working with customers like Lorianne and Matt, we're able to not only bring digitally accessible software into our ADCs, but also assess and improve existing software in ADCs to make it more digitally accessible. So when you go home at the end of the week, I encourage you to get together with your teammates at your organizations and ask each other, is the software that we provide to our workforce and to our customers digitally accessible? And if you're not sure, or if you don't think that it is, then get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you and see how we can help to enhance your digital accessibility. And if you're a government customer in an ADC, get in touch with me and let me know what types of tools and third-party resources would help you meet your mission objectives. If you're a channel partner or an AWS partner or coming from an independent software vendor, and maybe you're already working with the government on delivering your tools into ADCs, we'd still love to hear from you and see how maybe working together, we can make that process even more efficient. We're so excited about the things that we're doing with AWS Marketplace and ICMP, and so grateful that you joined us for this session today. We do have time for questions, so I'll invite Lorianne and Matt to rejoin me on stage. And while they're coming on up, I just want to remind everyone to please take that session survey because we need your feedback so we can improve for next year. Thank you again so much for your time today. We'll stick around so that we can meet you one-on-one, and we definitely look forward to hearing from you. And Matt, Lorianne, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.